Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. So after all the body cam, all the footage that has been released, all the images, all the text, all this analysis, what is the bottom line? What do we come to after looking at the whole, right? What is the kernel of truth that sort of comes out of that? And so in sum, the question is just how serious are the problems, because there are problems and inconsistencies. So on the same day that Santa Fe dumped Rust-related body cam, crime scene photos, police interviews and texts, Alec Baldwin's attorney, Luke Nichols, quickly responded with his own statement. Quote, "The information that has been revealed by the authorities demonstrates once again that Mr. Baldwin acted responsibly and did not have control over any production issues that were identified in the OSHA report. Additionally, the interviews and affidavits disclosed today continue to corroborate Mr. Baldwin's description of the events, including an affidavit from the detective stating that the cameraman who was standing next to Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza at the time of the accident confirmed that Mr. Baldwin was, quote, very careful, unquote, with the guns on set." And that is the end of the attorney's statement. Now, one point I want to highlight from that statement is this idea of the interviews, quote, continuing to corroborate Mr. Baldwin's description of events, end quote. 6 months later, and with other distractions circling in the media and social media, such as the Johnny Depp trial, it's easy to accept these comments uncritically at face value. But it should be made clear and explicit that there appear to be real problems and inconsistencies between some of Baldwin's statements and what Fox News refers to as contradictions with contemporaneous police reports. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So I'm quoting from a Fox News article, and I'll put a link to that in the description. It's quite well written, and they talk about Baldwin saying that there's no recoil, that he felt no recoil. Something else that is mentioned in the article, quote, "In the newly released videos, Baldwin tells his interviewers that Hannah handed me the gun." Those are his words. Baldwin saying, "Hannah handed me the gun." And that is referencing the armorer and contradicting contemporaneous police reports that stated Halls had handed Baldwin the gun and told him it was cold or safe before the incident. End quote. One of the inconsistencies is in Baldwin saying that Hannah, that's the armorer, handed him the gun during the crucial final handover immediately prior to the incident. Curiously, it appears the director, Joel Souza, volunteered the same claim from his hospital bed.
I remember the armorer handed the actor a gun. I don't know if she said it was cold or clean, but she handed him the gun, and then there was a bang that was a louder bang than I've heard come from a blank before.
Okay. So what you just heard there, the Fox News article confirms in its article. It says, quote, "Souza also told police the armorer handed Baldwin the gun and described the incident from his perspective in an interview from his hospital bed, which he later said he could not recall because he was zonked out on medication," end quote. Now, what is quite interesting is when he gives that interview, there's also another, looks like a nurse present. So it's not only the officer taking a statement. When he says these crucial words, there's actually a nurse walking around in the background. It would actually be good to identify her and get her statement as well. I'm not sure what the source is or when the source is for Souza saying he could not recall because he was zonked out on medication. My understanding was that he wanted to give a statement to the cops prior to receiving medication, prior to having the slug surgically removed from his shoulder, and then he did exactly that. In fact, this intention is captured both on police body cam and in the responding officer's written statement. In terms of his statement on body cam, it appears he made it before he was zonked out, and what he said was the armorer handed Baldwin the gun. But that's not the version the armorer gave, and if we look at points 71 and 72, It's also not the position from the Hutchins suit. So if we refer first to the armorer's lawsuit, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, point 70 reads, sometime in that approximate 15-minute period, Assistant Director Halls gave the firearm to Alec Baldwin, calling out cold gun, which signified that the firearm was empty or contained only inert dummy ammunition. Hannah was not inside the church and out of earshot and did not hear this called out by Halls. 71. After receipt of the firearm from Assistant Director Halls, Alec Baldwin has stated that he began practicing the cross draw from his shoulder holster and camera angles with Helena Hutchins for an upcoming scene. Now, one thing that I think is quite interesting there is the cocking of the hammer. Was that really supposed to have taken place? Anyway, now we go on to the lawsuit by the Hutchins suit, and point 68 reads as follows. Defendant Armorer Gutierrez Reed, who was responsible for maintaining the revolver and the ammunition while on set, had left the revolver and ammunition out of the safe she maintained for securing firearms on the set. It's quite interesting here that they say had left the revolver and ammunition out of the safe. As far as I recall, what she says in the police interview was that all the revolvers were placed in the safe. Anyway, Defendant Gutierrez Reed did not verify the revolver or ammunition was safe before the first Assistant Director, Defendant Halls, took the revolver to Defendant Baldwin. Defendant Halls never verified the revolver was safe before handing it to Defendant Baldwin. Defendant Baldwin accepted the gun from Defendant Halls rather than the production's armorer. Defendant Baldwin never verified the gun was safe before operating the gun, nor did he require the armorer or Defendant Halls to demonstrate in his presence that the gun was safe. So according to that last suit, they're basically saying none of these three individuals kind of formally verified or declared that the gun was safe. In early November, the New York Post reported on Halls breaking his silence for the first time, and what follows is a quote from that article. Dave Halls did not address details of the incident or respond to previous reports that he was the one who handed the hot gun to actor Alec Baldwin. Halls told police he couldn't recall how thoroughly he checked the weapon. He said something about he could only remember seeing 3 rounds, that he should have checked them all, but he didn't. The witnesses also denied that Halls had called the gun cold before giving it to Baldwin, according to the source. End quote. Now, interestingly, during his exclusive with ABC News in early December, Baldwin said it was Halls who handed over the gun. And this is a quote from the ABC News article in December. Quote, during rehearsal, Baldwin said the film's first assistant director, Dave Halls, handed him a revolver. Baldwin recalled Halls telling him, this is a cold gun, which is industry jargon for a weapon that is either literally empty or loaded with non-firing dummy rounds.
I'm handed a gun and someone declares, they said, this is a cold gun.
Dave Halls?
The first AD. In my years on the sets of film, hot gun meant that there was a charge in there and cold gun meant there was nothing in there.
So what I find really interesting about that particular moment, it's at 1 minute 09 of the second part in the Alex Baldwin exclusive interview. I'll put a link to that in the description. Is at no point does Alec Baldwin actually say that Dave Halls hands him the gun. He basically says, I'm handed a gun, right? And then the interviewer says Dave Halls, and then he sort of just continues. It's almost as though he consents to that. He certainly doesn't interrupt the interview and say, no, it wasn't Dave Halls, it was the armorer. In the same ABC News article, it quotes the lawyer for Halls, Lisa Torraco, saying the following, quote, the lawyer for Halls has since said that checking the weapon was not his responsibility and that expecting an assistant director to check a firearm is like telling the assistant director to check the camera angle or telling the assistant director to check sound or lighting. Torraco also would not confirm if Halls was the person who handed Baldwin the gun, end quote. So do you see, it is quite interesting that there is some significant argument within the timeline about who actually handed the gun to Baldwin. Baldwin and Sousa initially claimed it was the armorer, Gutierrez Reed. She claimed it was Halls, and Halls's lawyer would not confirm or deny whether he handed the weapon to Baldwin. And there's something else from this Fox News article. Quote, Santa Fe authorities said they recovered a mix of dummy rounds, blanks, and fully functional bullets, that's live rounds, from the set after the shooting, end quote. What's also noteworthy is that Santa Fe authorities recovered additional live rounds from the Rust set. So it's wrong to assume there was just one. As we know by now, 0 live rounds are permitted on movie sets in America, and this one had several, according to the authorities. In short, what happened doesn't appear to be an accident, but an accident waiting to happen. Accidents waiting to happen are inevitable, aren't they? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.